Good afternoon, dear students. Now, we were already discussing the novel The Power and the Glory by Graham Greene, and I gave you a short introduction about the novel, what Graham Greene exactly talks about in the novel. Now, I'll continue further and I'll just let you know what exactly the novel is about. As the name itself indicates, there is a kind of a power and glory in the name as well as in the incidents and the stories that's related to it. Now, here in this novel, Greene examines the basis of sin and salvation by focusing on the final months in the life of a man who is the last priest still practicing his calling in Mexico. So, as we discussed in the last class, I told you that this novel surrounds around a priest, and he's a whiskey priest. So, this was a name coined by Greene himself for the priest. Now, in his treatment of The Fugitive, Greene offers two possible views of the protagonist's plight. Now, who's the fugitive here? The priest. And he's talking about two possible views of the life or of the plight, of the degradation of the protagonist. Who's the protagonist? The priest, the whiskey priest. And he allows his readers to form their own conclusions concerning the priest's fate in eternity. Now, the first view sees the priest's holiness as almost a truism. Now, the holiness of the priest, of course, as soon as we hear the word priest, the first thing that comes to our mind is that the priest is holy, spiritual, and is a representative of God. Now, the clergyman had lived in the most dire condition of the years in Mexico, half starved, assaulted by fever and the police, simply to carry out God's will. Even his death is caused by his sense of duty. He could have stayed across the mountains in safety, but he chose instead to administer last rites to the dying outlaw Calver, although he sensed that he would be wasting his time and that the message summoning him was almost assuredly a police trick. So we discover, however, that Calver did write the note. Now, the second view is expressed by the pious woman incarcerated with the priest. She condemns him. In her eyes, the priest is merely a drunk, a lecher, a jester at church, precepts, and above all, a sinner who will not repent. So, this is what basically was the opinion of this woman, because she never considered and regarded the priest as a priest. He wasn't a priest in the eyes of the woman. Now, let's see. The novel alternates between these two positions, focusing on the priest's own ruminations concerning the state of his soul, and Greene has chosen a most complex man to carry the burden of his theological ideas. But the priest has the capacity and the opportunity to analyze theological problems that have always troubled humankind. The nameless priest becomes every man, picking his way through the labyrinths of Mexico's mountain ranges and swamps in his attempt to do God's will, even though his spiritual situation is unnecessarily complicated by issues that would bother no one but the priest himself. So, this is again a problem that is going on in the mind of the priest. There is a kind of a self analysis that goes on, and it generally goes on amongst people who are considered to be holy and spiritual. Now, Greene's priest has a tender conscience and a tendency to see only the evil in his actions and to exaggerate his blemishes. To such a man, virtues become vices, and added to valid guilt, they almost overpower him. Greene's priest, however, does have reason to repent. Now, of course, when he's self-introspecting, he has reasons to repent. He was pompous in the early days of his priesthood. He subjugated emotions and concern for others to intellectual gymnastics. He did commit adultery, and he does drink far too much and might be an alcoholic. So, this could be the reason that why the priest was in guilt. But his imagined crimes he feels are much worse. He feels guilty because he loves the offspring of his sin, Brigitta. He suspects that his refusal to leave Mexico stems merely from pride. He broods over taking a lump of sugar from a dead child and snatching a bone from a dying dog, even though he himself is starving. So, these things are really troubling him, his mind. He concerns himself unduly for enjoying a few days of rest at the lair's home and while there is, he is immediately conscious of his tendency to return to his old, stilted ways, so sensitized in his conscience to any possible rumblings of sin. So we can understand here that what goes is going on in the mind of uh, the priest, and of course also in the mind of Graham Greene. Now, apart from this, we also have to understand that the novel, The Power and the Glory, I think the name itself suggests something which is quite suggestive. The title of the novel is quite suggestive. We already understand what is power, and I think you already understand what is glory. Something that gives us power also destroys us to some extent, and something that gives glorifies us also uh, makes us popular. Now, the priest is a fully drawn character. He is also a spokesman for Green's view of the continuity of the Catholic Church. As a sensitive and thoughtful person, he is scarcely expendable, yet he is only a small part of the large spiritual organization, the Roman Catholic Church. In his debate with the lieutenant, the priest states that the totalitarian state is based upon the personalities. When its leaders die, he says the government will probably fall, consumed by corruption. The church, he argues, does not depend on any person, and the appearance of the new priest at the end of the novel manifests Green's thesis. So we have to understand in the end when how a new priest and in other way represents the last one, and how Greene embodies him in the novel. So we'll end here and we'll continue about the novel in the next class. Thank you so much.